Show of hands. Who here believes that within their lifetime, the current political system in the United States will remain intact? So like President, Congress, White House, etc. Let me write this down. Okay, so yeah, it's a pretty widespread phenomenon, and political scientist Francis Fukuyama described this as the end of history. So, at the turn of the 21st century, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, I guess we sort of decided as a world that liberal democratic capitalism was our way to go, the inevitable human model, as it had triumphed over everyone else. And it's this line of thinking that dominates our politics. So, today we live in a new age, and we're told that everything is possible. There's talk of travel to Mars, there's new advancements in artificial intelligence, and there's talks of biogenetics. As students, we're told we can do anything if we study hard enough, we can achieve our dreams. However, where does this rhetoric go when discussing politics? Why does suddenly everything become impossible? Examples: increased taxes, impossible, that would make us uncompetitive. Increased wages, impossible, that would increase unemployment. So, we at IHS experienced this sort of line of thinking firsthand. The reason for this sort of thinking is because in our time, just as the Catholic Church was an unquestionable entity in the past, capitalism has become unquestionable. I mean, where in the developed world do we really see genuine challenges to what we would call the system? Does Bernie Sanders' proposals for increasing taxes really challenge global capital? And do we really expect to survive the threat of global warming if our biggest response to Trump's environmental policy is, well, we'll beat him in 2020? So, this line of thinking was demonstrated firsthand at IHS 2 years ago when we had an assembly on climate change. We had various climate change activists come to our school and discuss their opinions on the topic. The first person who went, we'll call him Xi. He worked in China with farmland restoration, and he discussed the incompatibility of a market system with a sustainable environment. And unsurprisingly enough, he received not a lot of applause. Someone who did receive lots of applause was a man who we'll call Joe, who discussed individual responsibility in the approach to climate change. Joe claimed that we, as individuals, could help climate change by changing our consumption habits. And it's interesting to see the stark difference in the reception of these two. Maybe it was the optimistic idea that each of us, bought organic food or recycled, we could save the planet. However, I think a bigger thing is that Xi, while criticizing the current system, did not offer an alternative. And of course, it's hard for us to imagine living in a system other than the one we grew up in. And that thought startled me. Why was it easier for me, and I assume most of us, to imagine the end of the world being through nuclear war, some environmental catastrophe, maybe an asteroid strike, than it was to imagine living in a post-capitalist system? This Joe's individualistic approach can be seen throughout our society. One example of this is our approach to global hunger. So, our planet currently houses 7 billion people, but what if I told you we produce enough food to feed 10 billion people? That means there's 140% of production of the amount of food we need to do. That means that we have access, supply of food for 3 billion people. And yet every year, 9.1 million people die of starvation. And how can we allow nearly 10 million people to die yearly of something so preventable? Again, there is an untouchable entity in the way, and this entity is called the market. So supermarket chains in the United States throw away 13 billion pounds of food yearly. And an example of how we approach global hunger is, again, at our school, IHS. We often hold food drives, which, while of course commendable and useful, really shows how we approach the problem. the responsibility now lies on the individual to donate food. Why do we put that responsibility on the average working person as opposed to these supermarket chains, which, like I said, throw away 13 billion pounds of food every year? This is because of the untouchable entity, the market. Supermarkets don't throw away food because they're evil. They throw away food to maintain the price of the food. To give away food would mean to lower its price. Who would, of course, dare challenge the profits of these big companies? So as a result, we tend to go around the main problem and we create opportunities for our own individual altruism. Starbucks is another example of this. Their coffee is super expensive, and it attributes this extra price to its usage of fair trade coffee and its efforts towards donating its revenue to charities around the world. With this, Starbucks has done something truly remarkable. It has included the altruism in the price of the commodity. Now, for each of us to get our own self-satisfaction to help our community or whatever, we don't have to work anymore. We don't have to do any labor. We just have to buy a product at a higher price. We've commodified altruism. And so, outside of the realm of economics, we should look at our approach to politics. Here in liberal San Francisco, it is way too easy to criticize Trump. We should instead look at ourselves and criticize ourselves. Trump and the rise of the global far right are not the disease. However, they are the symptoms of a disease which has been growing and incubating for years. People are becoming disillusioned with years of political stagnation, economic crisis, and environmental disaster. Except without an alternative, people are left to violent reaction and scapegoating. I mean, who are today's champions of liberal democracy? Is it Elon Musk, who prevents Tesla and SpaceX workers from unionizing? Is it Tim Cook, who everyone knows, has heard this story, from Apple? The phones they purchase, the hardware, comes from factories which install nets in the factories to prevent the workers from jumping off and killing themselves. That's how the conditions are. Is it Angela Merkel, who in Germany's vote for the legalization of gay marriage voted against it, saying that marriage was between a man and a woman? Is it Emmanuel Macron, who spends much of his time as France's president trying to gut France's labor unions? Or perhaps Barack Obama, who has deported 2.5 million people and whose drone program in the Middle East continually kills hundreds of innocent civilians? Maybe it's Justin Trudeau, whose fancy socks should not distract us from the fact, despite claiming to be a feminist, he continually signs billion-dollar weapon deals with Saudi Arabia during the civil war with Yemen, which is currently going on, and they're using these weapons to kill Yemeni civilians. Our politics seem to be full of contradictions, with no light at the end of the tunnel. I do not claim to have an alternative, and nor do I claim to be free from these ideological chains that I've described. However, I insist, let's start thinking about it. And perhaps, before it's too late, we can finally answer the questions asked by revolutionaries 100 years ago. What is to be done? Thank you.